Welcome back aboard Arabella. While there's still plenty of work to do up on deck, the high winds and cold temperatures are keeping Steve focused on the interior tasks. This week, with the isolation transformer finally wired in, Arabella can now be safely hooked up to shore power. In the galley, the spot where the wood stove used to sit gets closer to being useful for food storage, and later, Steve and Robin take a trip to the local maritime museum and reflect on the rich seafaring history here on Cape Cod.
Oh my gosh, honey. It's so clean over here. We got the... Oh, you found homes for the Starlink. I see them. They're not in the way anymore. Oh, here they are. That couldn't have been easy to mount those.
Yeah, they fit really well in the forward face of the cockpit there. And the way they designed these, there's like a plastic case that the actual hardware pieces clip into. So if we want to take them out for some reason, they're pretty easy just to like undo the wires and unclip them and take them out. We don't actually have to like unscrew the housings or anything unless we want to move them or like fully replace them. So that was kind of nice, because getting the housings in and getting the screws in was the tighter thing.
And those can live there forever? Like, I mean, oh my gosh. They can live there while we're like underway? It's all good?
Yeah, it's all good.
Awesome.
Guess what?
What?
We have working shore power.
No way, Jose.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's not hooked up at the moment, so why don't I run you through that so that you know more of how to use our home?
Yeah.
Because every time I do one of these things, I gotta then show you how it all works.
I appreciate it.
All right, give me that camera. So these uprights are where power comes into the dock. Most of them are working, some of them are not. So if you open up the box on this side, you'll see there's a breaker on the bottom that says 30 on it, and there's an orange test button.
Yep.
Right, see that? Yep.
Yep.
So that's how you would turn off the power on and off to this.
Okay.
And if there's some sort of issue, that'll go. So
Okay.
making sure that's on.
Okay.
Step number one. And then we're plugged into it with our plug.
Okay.
So if you, this isn't screwed in, but this just comes out with a partial turn. And you can see this is like back to elementary school, trying to figure out the square peg and the round hole and all that. So just figure out who wants to be in what orifice.
Oh.
Slide that in, and then it just kind of twists in. So it should lock.
Okay. All right.
So that's that on that end.
Okay.
And if you follow that cord.
Yep. All right, so that's here.
Yep. And so if you look on the back of that box, see that big
yeah
plug?
I never noticed that before. Did you just put that in?
No, that's been there.
It's been there? I've just never noticed it?
Never noticed it.
Great. Good
Aiden
job.
installed that before we launched. I think Aiden installed it.
All right, good job, Robin. Okay.
Okay, and now that little black ring
Yep.
can screw on.
Gotcha.
Now the boat is effectively hooked up to the shore power. Down below we go.
Hi, buddy.
If you follow me back here. I know it seems like it's really hard to get back here, but that's mostly because all of the fenders for Victoria and the batteries for Victoria are all piled in the lazarette for the winter. And normally you would come in and out through this way, and it's pretty quick and easy to get down here. Shore power comes in up there on deck behind this fuel tank.
Okay.
And it runs down underneath me and comes into this isolation transformer. What the isolation transformer does is science that's beyond my total comprehension. But essentially, it's breaking the power that is attached to the shore and what's in the boat. So that if there is a current leak in the boat, there's a current leak on the shore, it can't create a loop and have that current running and causing electrifying the water and galvanic action on the boat and all sorts of issues. And like I said, it's not something I totally understand. I'm sure that a few of you understand it way better and can probably explain it in the comments for us all. But this is pretty important, especially on a wooden boat. So this is making that shore power pretty safe for us. So it runs into the isolation transformer. This is just on and hardwired in. There's nothing we need to do with this. And then it goes from the isolation transformer into this box over here. And then from this box, it runs to underneath where you are currently laying.
Mm-hmm.
To this guy here. And this is our inverter and charge controller. And then it goes back from the inverter charge controller to the box up there. So that contains all of our 110. So let's go take a look at that and continue to show you how plugging into shore power works. Once we are plugged in, your next step's gonna be come down and wake that up. Mm-hmm. All right. Now if you touch it again, you see how it says multi-plus compact?
Yep.
The one that's highlighted? That is the inverter charger. Go to see where it says switch. Hit that. All right, and now you have choices.
Okay.
So if we don't need to use any 110 power in the boat and you're just looking to charge the batteries, you can put it on charge only.
Okay.
If we're only looking to use the inverter, we can put it on inverter only. And this is the same thing you would do if you want to turn on the 110, even when we're not plugged into shore power.
Okay.
So if you turn the inverter only on, it'll energize the 110 outlets. So why don't you just throw it on? We'll put everything on. Yep.
Okay. I heard the switch.
You heard the switch,
Yeah.
And now it's inverting. So it's taking power from our battery bank and it's turning it into 110. So it's turning 12 volt into 110. So this is our shore power switch. And then this is our AC coming back from the inverter. So if you want to turn the AC on, so basically if you want to make this outlet work,
That's flip.
or you want to make the hot water heater work, which isn't hooked up yet, so don't use it.
Okay.
But eventually. So flip that top switch.
This one?
Yep. Here you go. So now our AC main is on, and you can see the reader out up above. It says AC volts. So we are at 125 volts, about where we want to be. And then you can switch on the one that says outlets. Yep.
Oh, and then
the outlets on.
okay.
So now the 110 in the boat is working, and that's currently happening off of our battery bank.
Okay.
So you can turn all that off, because we don't need it right now. So this switch turns on and off the power coming from the isolation transformer to the charge controller, the charger inverter.
Okay.
So the shore power comes in and it's hardwired into that isolation transformer. And then this switch is the break between the isolation transformer and the charger inverter on the boat.
Okay.
So you can turn that on.
So the shore power is not working at all yet because we haven't turned the switch yet.
It
right?
dead ends at that switch at the moment.
Okay. But not anymore.
Not anymore.
That.
Yeah. So you turn that on. And now the shore power is making it all the way to our inverter charger.
Okay.
So that is now going to start charging the battery banks.
Gotcha.
And the button that says test monthly, if you press that, press that.
Oh, I don't like that noise.
You don't like that noise?
Well, no, I'm not expecting it.
No. So that is testing the GFI. So if there's like water or anything in the system, it's reading anything hinky. It'll shut that off and kill the 110 power. You're going to hear a click.
There it was.
There's the click. And now we got shore power coming in.
Okay.
And this system should shut itself off when the battery reaches 100%.
Oh, okay.
And then it should kind of turn itself on when the battery starts to drop again.
Great.
All right, how do you feel about the shore power and the inverter connections?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I feel like I could do that on my own if I had to.
Cool. A lot of people just leave hooked up to shore power all the time, but it can be a source of fire, and if something does go hinky and the batteries overcharge, it could potentially lead to an issue. There's all sorts of things that should stop that, but
Yeah.
I think since the battery bank is big enough and we don't have a crazy amount of draw, I think that we plug into shore power and charge up the batteries when they start to get low, and then
Yeah.
disconnect it from the boat, and then there's just like no worries at all.
Yeah.
And then when the battery's down to 60% or whatever,
Yeah.
plug in when we're here and charge it back up.
Yeah.
Just
Great
be
to have
sure.
that running.
Well, I may not have been wise enough to know that the diesel heater would be plenty and the wood stove space would be better used in other ways. And I can't say I wasn't warned, but past Steve did do something right. He made this pretty easy to take apart. So I took out these 3 bolts and all the tile work disappeared. And now we've got a big open space that we can rebuild into something more functional. And since I'm not an experienced sailor, since I'm not doing a restoration and I'm tied to history or anything like that, I took a lot of liberties with the interior, but I knew those liberties might not work out. So everything is pretty modular, and if one component, like the wood stove, doesn't work out, it's kind of set up where I can gut that section quite easily and build something new in its place, and in this case not affect the settee and not affect the galley stove, and all that can just stay put, and I can rebuild that void between them. So good job, Past Steve. I really like it when I like Past Steve, and he did a good job. It really sucks when Past Steve did a bad job and I'm mad at him. Man, it's the thing with living with your work. You either pat yourself on the back or you kick yourself in the keister, but you really only got yourself to blame. And I kind of like it that way.
As Steve was already making a mess with his new cabinetry project, he made use of a salvaged shelf from Old Victoria to make a new spice rack above the galley sink.
All right, let's go see if we can find some propane parts.
The electrical wiring for the propane system and the solenoid shutoff valve is in place, but a couple of fittings were still needed to get it all working.
That's that end.
That seems like that'll work.
You're just gonna have to goop,
Oh yeah.
goop it up.
Yep.
You
Seal
got all
it.
that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Ooh, oh wow. Judging by the trash and the wheelbarrow, looks like you've made some progress. All right, come on, bud. All right. Load up, buddy. Oh my goodness! Oh, wow.
Well, I've been playing Jenga today.
Okay.
So I need some small like 1x1s to frame out the plywood with. So
Okay.
if we swing by the shop on Wednesday, Don said he can mill those up out of the scrap for us.
Oh, nice.
So that'll save me having to try to do it with the circular saw, which is
Great.
going to be a royal pain.
Yeah.
But I also thought this would let us just kind of play a little bit because there's a few
Yeah.
different ways we could lay it out.
Where did this come from?
Victoria.
No, I know, but like,
It's been
This was-
it's just been on the workbench.
it's been sitting on the workbench?
Yeah, so the clutter on the workbench, that's where that bronze rod came from, and that's where that mahogany shelf came from.
Yeah, that looks great, honey. That's very cool. Oh
So,
my
and
goodness.
Check out your spice drawer.
This one, right? This one?
Yeah, I think that one.
Oh my god.
So it's
We're down to 2 salts.
no,
And
not-
my-
no. There's 2 more salts up there, and there's an unopened salt in the
I know.
bins over there.
But look, thank goodness, because this one's almost gone.
I moved stuff around in the back behind the sink.
Yes, I can see that. That looks great too. I like that the cleaning supplies are all more accessible because that was something I was like leaping over and looking like a slob trying to get back there. Oh, that's so cool. They're magnetic. Oh, that's great. I didn't even realize that we had that as an option.
Yeah, that
That's-
was in the bucket of like weird bronze fittings.
Nice. So I'm magnetic. So it's like a female and a male part. It's not
Yep.
like actually magnetic. It just feels
Well,
it.
no, it's both.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Akiva is very curious about what's going on over in the reorganized food section. That looks so much better, honey.
Yeah, so once I get the 1x,
Yes.
I can start actually like permanently building things out.
This is a more permanent exhibit. This is all about the lighthouses of Cape Cod and the light keepers of them specifically, the men and women that kept the lights. And we highlight these artifacts in these 2 cases here because they are the very, very specific instruments used by the light keepers in order to make sure that they use the right amount of oil, the right amount of, they had to be very, very specific in measuring it because they were a part of the U.S. Treasury Department, which they were allotted a very specific amount of whether it was kerosene or whale oil to use for these lights. So one of the reasons why we have this exhibit up is because the first question we are asked when visitors come into the museum, besides where's the bathroom, is where is the nearest lighthouse we can see. We put together this wonderful handout that we allow people to take, which has all of the lighthouses on the Cape, a little bit of a map, and we also delineate which ones are privately owned, so people aren't walking into people's homes. So this is the largest private collection of scrimshaw on the Cape. It was given to us by Elizabeth and William Graham. They were a married couple who would collect these pieces to give to each other for birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, Valentine's Day, any real reason that they needed to give each other a present, they would give each other scrimshaw. We have not only sperm whale teeth here, but we have some narwhal tusks. We also have baleen, which would be used to make things like this ditty box. We also have walrus tusk. So this cribbage board in the back here is made with walrus tusk. And you can see that they're sort of delineated on the other part of this cribbage board. There's also some little seals along the top of it too. Right now, this is an exhibit we're having up through March of 2025.
Okay.
This is called Sailing Against the Tide, and it's all about the women of Cape Cod and the islands that have that are trailblazers or that have made major changes on the Cape to help us be who we are today. So we tell the stories of whaling wives, we tell the stories of scientists, we tell the stories of the women who went to sea with their husbands, whether they were captains or fishermen. We tell the stories of women who were in the different wars that we experienced since essentially the 17th century. We also tell a little bit more about the female lightkeepers. We tell the story of Hannah Burgess, which we are in the process of just installing that part. Hannah was the wife of a sea captain, and while they were at sea in the Pacific, her husband got incredibly ill and ended up dying at sea, and she was the navigator on the ship, and she managed to navigate the ship back to port in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
And got the crew back safely, and they pledged her safety and their safety, trusting in her to get there. So she's behind a wheel of a ship that would have been around the same time period, and she's wearing these beautiful dress from that time period as well. We don't have a huge collection, so a lot of the items you see on display are on loan from other institutions or private individuals. So for example, this dress and shawl and hat is on loan to us from the Historic Society of Old Yarmouth, and the ship's wheel right here is on loan from Mystic Seaport.
Oh, cool.
Now, another one I wanted to talk about, speaking of outfits that women would have worn, Anna Howard Shaw was one of the first Methodist ministers on Cape Cod. She was in Dennis, but she and her partner had this home in Wiano, where the newspaper here, you can see this is a clipping from the newspaper, where they called it an Adamless Eden because they had women there wearing bloomers and knickerbockers, and they were swimming and they were enjoying their lives. And that was very, that was very shocking at that point, that these women would be wandering around and enjoying their lives in bloomers and not a heavy woolen skirt or linen skirt at that point. So a lot of women out here made a lot of changes, and we wanted to tell these stories and bring them to light because, as far as we know, no one had brought these stories together in a cohesive exhibit like we did. So
This is very cool.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. Another interesting exhibit that we have is all about the Portland Gale, which was a storm in 1898. It was a couple days after Thanksgiving of that year. And it was basically a meshing of two very powerful storms, one coming up from the south in sort of New York State, and the other one coming across the Midwest. They met and converged this day, a couple days after Thanksgiving, over New England. And it essentially created a bomb snow cyclone situation like we've had in recent years. But this was 1898. And the storm was so powerful that nearly 500 ships sank. It was such a powerful storm that it essentially rerouted an entire river in Scituate, Mass. But the reason why it was called the Portland Gale is because of this steamship. A model of this steamship here is the Portland. It was a walking beam steamship with side paddle wheels here. So this walking beam is sort of this black diamond framed object in there. Now these side paddle wheelers were not built for open ocean travel, essentially. They were much more safer on inland waters like rivers, like the Hudson River. Of course, we all know of the stern paddle wheelers on the Mississippi.
Yep.
But in the late 19th century, the Portland Steam Packet Company was using this steamship and another one going back and forth between Boston and Portland. And it was one of the very, very few side wheelers that was on the open ocean at that point. Now, this storm was so bad that this entire ship went down, all hands, all crew, everyone aboard.
Wow.
And the most interesting part about this story, besides the incredible sadness of losing that many lives, is that the passenger list, there was only one version of the passenger list, and it was aboard the ship. And so there was...
So there's no real record.
Right, and there was no confirmed record of exactly who was aboard. And this disaster, the loss of the ship, spurred the change where most steamship lines and ferry lines that had passenger lists, they would keep one on land and then one aboard the ship in case something like that happened again. People had an exact record of who went down.
Wow.
So because of that, there's no confirmed number of people that went down with the ship. The prevailing thought is that there was about 192, but this ship itself could fit something like 700 passengers. So of course it wasn't that much, but the thought is that it was about 192 people, give or take. Now, the last time this ship was seen, she was actually seen off of Cape Ann, outside of Gloucester.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, the wreckage of the ship has been found in Stellwagen Bank, which is just off of Provincetown. So you can tell that this storm really brought this ship much further south. She was probably at sea for quite a while. You can imagine that these paddle wheels here are really not great if you're in a trough, for
Yeah.
example. So this disaster really drove home that these types of ships should not be used on open ocean anymore. And we've got a great video showing 3D modeling there of what the wreckage looks like, which you can find with NOAA. They've done a lot of exploration of it, and of course, you can see sort of draping over it, there's a lot of fishing nets because it's so close to a major fishing area. A lot of drag fishing nets have just fallen over it. Anyways, it's a fascinating story, heartbreaking story, but one that's worth telling because of the sheer impact that a storm like that can have on a small region of our country. So another exhibit that we have up here is all about the U.S. Life-Saving Service, which before it was called the Life-Saving Service, it was actually called the Humane Society of Massachusetts. And it was interesting when we were doing research for this, we've known this, but when we started doing research for it, I'm sure you can imagine everything was coming up with, the Cats and Dogs Humane Society, yep. But it was actually the Humane Society of Saving Humans, essentially, the Humane Society. And it was a group of men different groups of men along the coast of Massachusetts who, in the case of a ship in distress or a boat in distress, they would go out with these vessels, these surf boats basically, to go and rescue the crew and the passengers aboard these ships. And it was a very, the reason we call it a selfless mission is because they were told they had to go out as part of their job to save these people, but they didn't have to come back. So it was a very dangerous occupation, but it was it still is an extremely highly respected occupation as well. So it went from the Humane Society of Massachusetts to the U.S. Life-Saving Service, and then it became the U.S. Coast Guard. So we tell that story of the sort of evolution and what life would be like for the men in those positions. We also have a few of the artifacts that they would have used in this position. And the best part about this entire exhibit is that at the end, you get to look out the window, and it's a little bit covered right now because of the winter, but you get to look out the window and see a surf boat that we are currently working on restoring. It's a surf boat that would have been used exactly like this in these images. It's from 1944, built by the U.S. Coast Guard, and we are about, I would say, 75% through restoring it. So another thing that we do in this shop besides restoration is we have youth boat building courses. This is one that local children, local youth have just finished making. This is a 12-foot Bevan skiff. They build it from stem to stern. The volunteers, it's more of a kit boat, so the volunteers do a lot of the cutting and prepping for it, and the kids do a lot of the measurements. They help with the bending, they do the epoxy, they do the painting, they do all that fun stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it's a great way, we don't like to tell the kids this, but it's a great way for them to be able to practice their math skills and use it on the fly.
Oh, for sure.
Of course, we can't tell them that because it wouldn't be fun anymore, but and this is an example of a finished Bevan skiff this is what it looks like when it's finished up. We are modifying all of the skiffs to actually be sailing Bevans so that we can hopefully one day have our own fleet of sailboats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a
We
good
don't want to
call.
compete with the local yacht clubs, but
Yeah.
we want to be able to have this sort of finished product that kids can either row or sail. This is we call it the Ashworth Boat Gallery. This building was built in about 2014, and we keep all of our historic vessels in here, whether you've got our Beetle Cat from 1932, we've got quite a few catboats in here, we've got a tender, we've got a Herreshoff, we've got a canoe, we've got a few peak color designed vessels, we've got Susie, which is a Woods Hole Spritzel. She's from 1899. We have not restored her or repainted her at all since 1899. So the condition she is in is original, which is really cool. And of course, we always have the little birds that like to live in our doorways.
I love that.
I know.
The sneak box is
Yeah.
kind of cool. It's
So-
not something you see every day.
No, and so this is not really a Cape Cod vessel. This was built by Bruce, our boatwright, and it's a Barnegat Bay sneak box, so more New Jersey. But it just came back to us from being on loan to the Harwich Historical Society. They have it's called the Kroll Barn, and it was a barn built by Elmer Kroll, who was a decoy carver. And he was a very, very talented decoy carver. And so this was part of an exhibit there about waterfowl hunting on the Cape and the decoy carving of that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, neat features. Like I like how the centerboard trunk is off to the side.
Yep. Isn't that cool?
So that would be the slot for it, so that you can, the idea is you lay down and you'd cover it with like some brush and reeds and whatever, and you can gently row and quietly, that's why I call it a sneak box, sneak up on the ducks or the geese, and then you pop up. So that's why the cockpit's so narrow and long and the centerboard's off so that you'd actually slide down in there.
Very cool.
And one of the most fun items we have in our collection is this Cape Cod Frosty up here.
This is super cool.
It is, isn't it? The entire thing, fully rigged, is 40 pounds.
No way.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. It's a really cool, historic piece on the Cape. Sailed year-round, teeny tiny, easily movable. You can bring it anywhere you need to. Kids and adults alike sail these too. So this is the surf boat that we are restoring. There's a little bit more information on the plans of this surf boat and what it would have looked like. This was gifted to us by the National Park Service from the Cape Cod National Seashore in 2018. We've been working on restoring it since then. Of course, we took a little bit of a break in 2020 for obvious reasons and into 2021, but we've really been putting pedal to the metal with this. We've got a new keel, which fit perfectly the moment they put it in. We've only recently turned it over. We had her in essentially frames to keep her in shape, and now we've been able to take her out. We're working on adding new planks and scarfing and all that fun stuff. New rivets.
I know that game well.
Yes.
Bit bigger scale, but
Yes.
same thing.
Yes.
We've got a lot crammed into this little
We
place.
do. We do.
Yeah, just
We've got a
jam-packed.
small footprint here, but we put a lot into it and a lot into what we do and our programming and, what we got going on. And what better spot for a maritime museum too, right?
It's so cute. Told you that I see snowy owls out on Plymouth Beach all the time.
Once.
Yeah, I think it was like 2018. There was
Something like that, yeah.
drone footage of it. Yeah, but that was the last time.
Yeah, well, prior to that, I saw some of the slush waves, which was cool.
Those are cool.
Those are really cool looking, but you don't see them very often either.
No.
It just doesn't stay cold long enough
No,
here.
it doesn't.
When I first moved here, we